This Notebook LM video explores the ecclesiastical hierarchy, portraying the church as a mirror of the cosmos, with divine light flowing from God through angels and clergy to the faithful. It presents the hierarchy not simply as an organizational structure, but as a sacred, living system that reflects the divine and angelic order, designed to guide every soul back to God.
Okay, so imagine a single document, just one text, that was so powerful it literally built the spiritual world for an entire civilization for over 1,000 years. Well, today we're diving deep into that exact text, the Ecclesiastical Hierarchy. But to really get a grip on its power, we have to start with a bit of a historical puzzle. It's a case of mistaken identity that gave this one book an almost unbelievable amount of authority. So who was this mystery author? And right here, you can see what some have called a pious fraud at the very heart of this story. The claim was that the author was Dionysius, a guy converted directly by St. Paul in the 1st century. But the reality, it was actually an anonymous writer from almost 500 years later. And that little detail, well, it changed everything. See, this wasn't just a minor error on a book cover. It was the key that unlocked a whole millennium of influence. Because everyone thought he was a disciple of the apostles, his ideas were treated as sacred, almost like scripture itself. They became the absolute, undisputed blueprint for the entire medieval church. So let's get into the core idea here and see how this built a vision for the entire universe. This wasn't just about how to organize a church. For this author, it was about mapping the cosmos. Now, when we hear the word hierarchy, we probably think of, a corporate org chart. But for Dionysius, it was something else entirely. It was this sacred living system, a channel for divine light. The whole point of it was salvation, creating this orderly path for every single soul to climb back up to God. And this slide just illustrates that cosmic ladder perfectly. You've got God at the very top, the source of all light. Then that light flows down through the angels, then to the clergy here on earth, and finally to all the faithful. The idea was that the church on earth was a direct mirror of the perfect order of heaven. Pretty amazing. So the big question is, how did you actually climb this ladder? Well, it all boiled down to a simple, repeating 3-step pattern. This pattern was everywhere, in every sacrament, in every spiritual rank. It was the master key to the whole system. And here is that engine: purification, illumination, and perfection. Think of it as a journey. First, you're cleansed, then you're enlightened with divine truth, and finally, you achieve union with God. This 3-beat rhythm is the engine that drives everything. Let's look at how this actually works in the real world, starting with the very first sacrament you'd encounter: baptism. This is the ultimate act of purification. It's that moment where you're symbolically cleansed of your past, and you take your first step onto that spiritual ladder. I mean, this quote shows you just how real this idea was. The ritual of baptism literally had you turn your back on the west, the direction of darkness and your old life, and then turn to face the east, towards the rising sun and divine light. It's a physical action that represents spiritual cleansing. And then at the other end of the path, you have the Eucharist. Dionysius actually calls it the initiation of initiations. This wasn't just another ritual. It was the ultimate act of perfection. This was the moment a soul could achieve that complete communion with God. Okay, so now we get the system, right? We have the ladder and we have the 3 steps to climb it. So let's meet the actual players who operated within this divine order. The clergy was structured perfectly to manage this 3-fold path. You had the deacon, whose job was purification, getting newcomers ready. Then you had the priest, whose job was illumination, teaching the faithful. And at the top, you had the bishop, whose role was perfection, leading the whole community towards that ultimate union with God. And what's so cool is that the laity, the regular folks, were set up in parallel ranks that mirrored that exact same journey. You had the catechumens being purified, the holy people or regular churchgoers being illuminated, and then finally the monks, who were seen as the perfected ones, living that life of pure service. So why are we talking about this ancient, mystical text today? Well, because its impact on Western civilization was just monumental. It casts an incredibly long shadow. I mean, we're not talking about a book that was popular for a few decades. For over 1,000 years, these writings were the undisputed blueprint for pretty much all spiritual, mystical, and even administrative life in Western Christendom. 1,000 years. Just let that sink in. So at the end of the day, this single work was basically the complete operating system for the medieval world. It was their organizational chart, their theology, it even defined their entire worldview, creating this vision of a perfectly ordered universe where every single soul had a ladder leading straight back to God. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This ancient text laid out a perfectly ordered, hierarchical cosmos where everyone knew their place and had a clear path to the divine. It kind of makes you wonder, in our modern, much more chaotic world, what's replaced that ladder for us in our own search for meaning?